The Sikha we will be learning is from Chelik Chavches. Look at the Sikha's Chelik Chavches with the title Gimmel Tamuz. It's about Gimmel Tamuz, which is the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe went out from prison and was sent to Kastrama, as we will be learning in the Sikha. The Rebbe starts with Gimmel Tamuz, the third day of Tamuz, which is the Tog of Kveitlishas Meire Bechomi Admuris Bafreit geworden from Beis Asurim, the day that the Frierdiker Rebbe was freed from prison. Faltu is become a shonim bismichas Shabbos Parshas Chukas. It comes out many years close to the Shabbos of Parsha of Chukas, Amol in der Woch from Parsha Chukas, sometimes in the week of Chukas, actually in the Parsha Chukas, Ulopomim in the tag V'chaven Mizborach from Shabbos Parsha Chukas. Sometimes it's in the days which come after Shabbos Parsha Chukas. That means they get the bracha from Shabbos Parsha Chukas, because we know that it says in Zohar that from Shabbos, Mizborchin Kuliyim, and all days of the week after Shabbos get the bracha from Shabbos. So sometimes it comes out in the week after Chukas, so it's in the time when it gets the bracha from Shabbos, Parshas Chukas. The bottom line is it's connected to Parshas Chukas. And the Rebbe says in the Order 1 that in the year Tofresh Pei which was the actual year when the Frierdiker Rebbe was freed from prison, the year of the Meiser Regula, actually came out that way. It was after Shabbat Parshas Chukas. And it's same as when the Sikha was printed, which in the year Tov Shimem Dal, also was the same Kviyas. But the bottom line is it's connected to Parshat Chukas. Well, like Mavustin Wort from Shalom, by according to the famous saying of the Shalom, as Allah meyad yashono, kelel eich meyadim terabonos eine nirmes in the Parshas Atayra velchamelent in the Shabboses when ze eine chal. The Shalom says that all the special dates in the Torah, even dates with the Rabbanon, not only Yom Tov from the Torah, but even dates with the Rabbanon, or special dates that happened later years, are all hinted in the Parshas of the Torah that you read in the Shabbosim when these special dates come out. Is verstanden. Based on that, we understand that as is do a remes in Parshas Chukas of the Gula from Gimmel Tamuz. That there must be a hint in Parshas Chukas, since it's connected to Parshas Chukas. There's a hint to the Geula, the redemption of the Frierdiker Rebbe from Gimmel Tamuz. And the Rebbe goes in to explain it. In the Gula von Rebbe seinen gewähnt zwei Klolos dike Shlovim. In the Gula of the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, there was generally two stages. Gimmel Tamuz is befreit geworden from Beis Asurim. Gimmel Tamuz, he was freed from prison. Aber man hat ihm dann verschickt in Golos of 3 years, but they sent him then to exile for 3 years. Originally, when they let him go from jail to go to Kostromai to exile, it was supposed to be for 3 years. As der noch then, bei Beis Yud Gimmel Tamuz, is in ganzem befreit geworden. Afterwards, on the 12th and 13th day of Tamuz, he was free completely. Eich von der Verschickung, he was freed from the exile. Und er hat sich gekannt can lebasically come home. And just by the way, why do we say Yud Beis and Yud Gimmel Tamuz, the 12th or the 13th? So which one is it? Is it the 12th or is it the 13th? So we know that he was notified about it on the 12th, that he's being free. He actually didn't get the papers. He wasn't actually free till the next day, because that day was a Goyish holiday, so he couldn't get the papers. So it happened the next day. So we have the celebration on Yud Beis and Gimmel Tamuz. So Gimmel Tamuz, he was freed from jail. Yud Beis and Gimmel Tamuz, he was actually freed from the exile, and he was able to come home. It comes out as the Gimmel Tamuz, he given the Aschola Sagula, Yud Beis, Gimmel Tamuz, he given the Shlema Sagula. So it comes out that on Gimmel Tamuz was the beginning of the Gula, and on Yud Beis, Gimmel Tamuz was the completion of the Gula. My high time is Farana in Gimmel Tamuz, like Yud Beis, Gimmel Tamuz. So based on that, we'll understand that there is something special in Gimmel Tamuz over Yud Beis, Yud Gimmel Tamuz. The Chag Gula is nicht geworden auf Yud Beis and Gimmel Tamuz Davke, even though that the celebration, the Yontef, was set for Yud Beis and Gimmel Tamuz, not for Gimmel Tamuz. And we just said now there's a Mailes that Rebbe will explain in Gimmel Tamuz of Yud Beis and Gimmel Tamuz. So he says the reason is das weil der Inye von a Chag v'simcha geluyim nekeveya v'nigul is b'shleimus, because to make a Yontef and have an official revealed simcha, you only do it when it comes to the shleimus, the completion of the Gula. Al derech with the Birchas HaGemel was the Rebbe gemacht erst noch the Gula b'Yud Beis Tamuz. Just like when the Frierdiker Rebbe made the Brocha HaGemel, he only made it after Yud Beis Tamuz. The Rebbe brings in order 3, that's brought down in the Sefer HaMamorim Kontreisim, but even the Maimorim that start with Birchas HaGemel, the Baruch HaGemel Chayov Teves, he also said after Yud Beis Tamuz. Weil man kann nicht machen die Broche, because you can't make a bracha. One of the times you make a bracha is when you come out of jail. But you could only make the bracha, like the Alter Rebbe says, and say the Brichas Hanenin, only if he goes out from the danger completely, like it says, if someone is sick and his life is in danger, and then he becomes healthy, he's cured, he makes a bracha, Brichas Gimmel, he only makes it after he comes out of the danger completely. So the same thing here also, when to make the Yontif, they made it only when there was the Shleimus Agula, the completion of the Gula, which was after Beis Tammuz. Aber in Etzem in Hagula is do an ilu in Ascholas Agula gab Shleimus Agula. But when we're talking about the concept of the Gula, the redemption, there's something special in the beginning of the Gula over the complete Gula. And the Rebbe explains why. Because was in der Aschol ist dort die Meile, was man brecht durch die Schwierigkeit von Kol Ascholas Kosher. You know, there's an expression that says Kol Ascholas Kosher. It says Mechilte, Rasha brings that all beginnings are hard. So the first part, to break through the first part is hard. So when you start the Gula, that's when you break through the beginning. And Hayesa, but der Ascholas Agula tut sich auf der Shinui, v'at lehofche, hamatzef and Golos Geile zu Gula, because at that moment, where does the change happen? From Golos to Gula. That happens in the beginning. Even though the beginning is not a complete Gula, but the change, the transformation from the matzav before to the matzav after is in the beginning. It changed from being in Golos, and this is now the opposite. It's a transformation from Golos or Geila to Gula. Actually, the Rebbe uses the word Geila because Geila and Gula have the same letters, just as the Rebbe explained in different places. Gula has an aleph in it, whatever it is, but it's a change from Geila to Gula. When does that happen? In the beginning. The transformation in the beginning. Later on, it's already more details in that change, but the change itself happens from in the beginning of the Gula. Befrat beniten die Dan, especially in our situation, but the Shine Amatze bepashtes, was hat sich aufgetan durch the Gula the Gimmel Tamuz, because the real change, the real transformation, is simple pshat that happened on the Gula of Gimmel Tamuz, which is the befreiing from Beis Hasurim when he was freed from the prison, and the prison was a Russian prison. Befrat in die Umständen von der Medina Hahi, bei Yom HaMayim, especially the situation, the way it was in that country, in Russia, those days. And the Rebbe says in Order 7, to be in jail was those days, especially Sakonis, as the Rebbe will explain later, that him being in jail extra time, being in jail was mamish dangerous. So therefore the transformation, afila, in a matzah from Golos, in Anir Cheka, even though the transformation was not to go home, the transformation was from jail to going in a matzah of Golos, which is pretty bad, and in a far city. Is given bekama protim, that change given in many details. Gerese with the shinner chiluk for zayin begelo and aruzkin chofshel lebeisei. So the transformation from prison to go to Golos is much greater than the transformation later on that coming from Golos and coming home, being free. Afil as zeindik, bifrat as zeindik noch dem bebeis is given unter ashgocha from Hamshalai. Because the truth is, even after he got home, he still was under the supervision, so to speak, of them, and the way it was in that time. So going from Golos home is not so great. But going from prison to going to Golos, that's a big change. So besides that, this is what we said till now was a reason to show that Gimmel Tamuz is something very special, the changeover from prison to not prison. But besides that, there's something special in Gimmel Tamuz, is doch Yidua, because it's known as in der Aschole von jeden Inyan is Kola die ganze Sache, that in the beginning of anything includes the whole thing. In other words, everything is included in a remez in the beginning. Everything is going to happen later. Al derech v'im gefind in the meaning from Rosh Tevis, like we find the concept of abbreviation. Rosh Tevis means we find, when you want to say a few words, we write the first letters of every word, which is an inyan al Petera or neir Petera. It's an inyan according to the Torah, Rosh Tevis, and we find such things in Torah. And the Rebbe brings from the Gemara in Shabbos where it says, "Mein shein loshen netrukim in Torah." Gemara says, "Where do we know from the Torah that there is such a thing as Rosh Tevis?" So there is a concept of Rosh Tevis. So what's the union of Rosh Tevis? Instead of writing the whole word, like you want to say Al Yedei Zeh, so you write Ayin Yud Zayin. 3 words. Ayin is the first letter of the word Al, and the Yud is Yedei, and the Zayin is from the word Zeh. So what does that mean? As der erste Ross von a Wort is Merames of dem ganzen Wort. The first letter of every word hints to the whole word. Ukadema, similar things like that. We find places at the beginning contains Bekitzer, what's going to happen later. Now, other time the Rebbe says, for instance, Rosh Hashanah. It's not called beginning of the year. It's called the head of the year. Why? Because on that day, Rosh Hashanah, it includes the chayas, the life of the whole year, as it says in Chassidus in different places. That is the same thing when it comes to Gimmel Tam, which is the beginning of the Gula, as the ganze Gula von Rebbe given Nirmes und Kolol in der Ascholas Gula von Gimmel Tam. The whole Gula of the Rebbe is hinted and included in the beginning of the Gula, which is Gimel Tammuz. So the practical reason that Rebbe said why Gimel Tammuz has something over Yud Beis Tammuz, because the change from a terrible matzav to even going to exile is a greater change than from coming from exile going home. But that's the Gashmazik thing. But in more is, since this is the beginning of what happened later at the end, Yud Beis Tammuz, it's included already in Gimel Tammuz, and therefore, if you look into what Gimel Tammuz is, you'll see how that includes, as the Rebbe will explain, how that includes the whole Gula of Yud Beis Tammuz. The Rebbe explains like this: the Teichen Klole von der Meister Gula von Rebbe doch verbunden mit seiner Aveda von der Bottes Hatere, Vachzokes Hayades Vafatzosam Dinahi. The general idea of the imprisonment and the redemption of the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, is connected to his work in spreading Torah, strengthening Yiddishkeit, spreading it in that country, in Russia. But the Aveda b'Yom HaMehemet gefordert Mesiras Nefesh B'Peil. What he did with his Aveda to strengthen Yiddishkeit was connected to Mesiras Nefesh B'Peil. The Rebbe here stresses these words, as we always know when there are words written in italics, by the Rebbe it's stressing. By other people, if the font is more bold, then that's a stress. By the Rebbe always it's the opposite. When it's in italics, it's stress. So the Rebbe, in the writing, he would underline these words, that it was a Mesiras Nefesh Poshet, putting your life at risk, Bepel Mamish, actually physically putting on this. That was the Aveda. And noch more than that, we get come upon the Rebbe, I spoke many times, is das given nichts da Mesiras Nefesh. This was not just a plain Mesiras Nefesh. Sometimes a person gives up his life for something that you have to give up your life. Nor a Mesiras Nefesh bli hagbolas ucheshbeines. Mesiras Nefesh without limitations, without any calculation. Wenn man wollte sich hereingelassen nach Cheshbon, sie seine dort Aussichten auf Piteve zu Machzliach sein oder Aveda Keitze, if someone would try to calculate to see how much possibility there is, al pi Teve, according to nature, to be successful in the Aveda that he did, but need given kein Ort zu angehen mit der Arbeit. There would be no place to continue with this work. Certainly not to give up your life for it, put your life on the line. And certainly need zu einstellen die Lebens von Talmide v'shluchav zu lieb der Aveda, not to put the life of his student Talmidim and of his shluchim for this Aveda. In other words, there is almost no chance for them to be matzliach. Der Mädchen von Mesiras Nefesh, als keine Chashbeines hat man gesehen, Gilo am Reben, in sein Eben der Monter Hanhogi Bechal, and this idea of Mesiras Nefesh, that he didn't have any Chashbeines, he didn't make any calculations in this, what he did, as we said before, Befrag the Kesher to sein Gula Gimel Tamas, certainly becomes the Gula Gimel connection to Gimel Tamas, as we'll see later, that there was no cheshbeines there. Bizas that etzem taidich from Gimel Tammuz b'shaychat to the geula the mont of Mesiras Nefesh, and therefore, just looking at what happened on Gimel Tammuz, that shows this idea. The whole idea of the Frierdiker Rebbe's work was Mesiras Nefesh beyond any cheshbeines. He just did Mesiras Nefesh for Yiddishkeit, no calculations. And in Gimel Tammuz, which is the beginning of the geula, you see it, as the Rebbe will explain soon. Kedolakaman, he will explain how in Gimel Tammuz is hinted, not only hinted, you see this type of Mesiras Nefesh, Lamaila from all Cheshbeines beyond all calculations. Yesh leimer ados was the Gula von Gimel Tammuz given verbunden mit der Tage von Mesiras Nefesh on kein Agbolos von Cheshbon, and you could say that this Inyan, that Gimel Tammuz was connected to this type of Mesiras Nefesh with other Cheshbeines, as we will continue see soon, is while in der Aschole von der Gula, it's a gedarf Tuesday in the Teichen Klole von the Meiser Gula, because in the beginning of Gula, it had to express what is the whole Teichen of the whole Meiser, of the whole imprisonment, and the whole Gula had to be seen in Gimel Tammuz, and that's why if you look, as the Rebbe will explain what took place in Gimel Tammuz, that's where you see clearly that he had Mesiras Nefesh without any Agbolas, and it happened on Gimel Tammuz because that was the beginning of Gula. So that was supposed to show what the whole union of the Meiser and the Gula is all about. And the Rebbe explains it. The Rebbe Baal HaGula V'Asimcha, the Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, the Baal HaGula V'Asimcha, he's the one that we celebrate his the redemption. And his Simcha told over, as Donnerstag, Reschede Tamuz, Vermittag, hat man ihm angesagt, die Idee, am lost him Arus von Beis Asurim. On Thursday, which was Reschede Tamuz, they let him know, they gave him this news, that they're letting him out from jail, man verschickt him auf 3 Jahre in Golus in the Stadt Kasterman. They're sending him away for 3 years into exile in the city of Kastrama. Dabei wird man ihm gelost wissen, aber bei Tag wird man ihn befreien von Tfise, so they let him know that during the day they're going to let him go free from jail. Man hat ihm der Leib zu verbringen, 6 Stunden mit seiner Pnei. They allowed him to spend 6 hours with his family. Und ihm angesagt hat, bei Nacht wird müssen verlassen die Stadt und fahren kann Kastrama. And at night, he was supposed to leave the city and go to Kastrama. Als wie das sie gewinnen Donnerstag sind, bis Thursday, hat der Rebbe gefragt, der Rebbe asked, when wird ankommen in Kastrama? When am I going to reach Kastrama? Hat man ihm geantwortet, the answer him, als wird dahin ankommen Shabbos. He's going to come Shabbos. Hat der Rebbe gesagt, so der Rebbe said, that Shabbos wird bestimmt nicht fahren. He said, Shabbos, under no circumstances he's going to travel. Und erst noch das, speziell Stadlis in die Kreisen von der Memscholle, and only special work, special trying and working in the special offices of the government, hat man gepeilt, at der Rebbe soll keiner fahren, Sonntag, Gimmel Tamuz, der Rebbe is able to go on Thursday, Sunday, Gimmel Tamuz, und bis demult is geblieben in Turme. Until then, he stayed in jail. He was supposed to leave on Thursday, but he would come there on Shabbos, so they peiled through the higher offices in government that they allowed him to stay in jail. He stayed in jail till Sunday, Gimmel Tamuz. Einer von die was hat bepeiled durchgeführt im Arrest von Rebbe, hat gesagt dem Rebbe, one of the people who actually arrested the Rebbe, told the Rebbe, as Eber wird nicht Maskem sein, sofort in Donnerstag bei Nacht und onkommen Shabbos in Kostrama. Told him that if you don't agree to go Thursday and come Shabbos to Kostrama, wird ihm nicht herauslassen von Turme. They're not going to let him out of jail. But the Rebbe ihm gern, der Rebbe asked him, as great zu bleiben in Turme, wie viel soll noch nicht sein? He said to him, I'm ready to stay more in prison, as long as it takes, aber Shabbos wird bestimmt nicht fahren. Shabbos he's not going to travel. That means like this, he allowed himself to stay in jail a few more days in order not to travel on Shabbos. Azah anoge, zu stellen sich mit Azah Teikim nicht sofort auf Shabbos fordert as Boris, to be so strong, not to go travel on Shabbos in such a situation, needs explanation. Durch seine Obsorgen sich ausfolgen, aber fällt zuvor im gleichen Kastrama, by not accepting their command that he has to go right away to Kastrama, when they were ready to let him go out of jail, und bleiben in Turmen agreeing to stay in jail, hat der Rebbe sich eingestellt gleich in der Matze von Vadai Sakona. So he put himself right away, right when he said that, he put himself in a Sakona, not a Sakona, maybe there'll be danger. It was a Vadai Sakona, it was a definite danger. Why? Weil Chatchile doch auf ihm given a Gzardin von Hepach Chaim. Chatchile, they gave the decree, the verdict was Chas v'Sholem, the opposite of Rahman al of life. Durch Stadlos hat man die Gseire mit Vatel gewähnt, es verbieten auf dem leichten Neinisch, but by Stadlos, they changed this Gseire, and they changed it over for a lighter punishment. First for 10 years, they said it'll be 10 years in exile, and then they changed it noch to 3 years in Golis, to be 3 years in exile. Und nach dem, and even after that, so die welchem Chatchil herausgegeben dem gesagt, Dino Rishon Anal, they nicht gebieten. And even after they changed it, and they're only sending him for 3 years to Kasterma to exile, the people who originally said that they should do the Hepech HaChaim, the opposite of life, didn't change their mind. Mal sie gezwungen von den Hecheren im Scholachreisen, they forced them from the higher offices in the government, as bleiben dig betaktivkom ubetovkom, that they remained in their position and in their strength, but they forced them from the higher government, sollen sie aber mevatel sein, dem Prat urteil und befreien der Rebbe von Turme, that they forced them to change the verdict and to let the Friedrich Rebbe go from jail. So they were very upset. You can imagine these people who had to change it and let him go out of jail and send him to exile, were very upset. So now staying extra days in jail with these people in charge. And these people were very upset that they had to let him go free. And now he's staying in under their jurisdiction now is definitely dangerous. So, because they were the ones that wanted him, chas v'shalom, what we said before, and now he's still in there, and he's still in jail, and who knows what they're going to do. So far, that means that the sakona that was there till now, during all the days in jail, you could imagine how dangerous it was. The proof is that they wanted to even, so to speak, hepech hachayim. So staying under that situation is terrible, is definitely dangerous. Here we have another thing. Befrat das Gufa, but the Rebbe sich abgesagt zuvor im Shabbos, hat bei seiner Rüßgerufen nach Kas Neise Begodel, that the fact that he didn't want to listen to them and didn't want to go on Shabbos, that caused them to get even more angry. Amaride gegen Zeir Pkude, that's going out directly rebelling against their command. Befarsing given as Zeir as in Zeir Turme Shmira Shabbos. In jail, under them, in their jail, he was telling him openly about keeping Shabbos. And it was very famous. Hapkidim v'asurim, inside the people in charge, inside the other prisoners, saw that what he's doing is he's telling him that you have to keep Shabbos. Nicht kennen durchführen sehr mezibet zu geben sein, als der Rebbe soll vor dem Shabbos. That he caused that they wanted him bedafke to not keep Shabbos, and he won and didn't allow that to happen. So you can imagine how angry they got. So this all makes them staying extra few days in jail is mamish a great sakona. Lidach, on the other hand, look at it the other way. That since he was supposed to leave Thursday afternoon, by that linie for Chil Shabbos given need basis manklau. So the Chil Shabbos was not at that moment, not at the same moment that he would be leaving, would be Machal Shabbat. It was just Thursday. And the second thing, Blaze Begeder Sofik, the Kamas Vegas. The fact that this will bring to Chil Shabbos is only a Sofik, only a doubt, and a few doubts. Why is it a doubt? For him, it's noch the Befreiung bei ihm Achamishi, given noch aggressere Möglichkeit von den Stadlers, wenn Agosse von Reben, als es only darf von Arus gehen gleich, Arus fahren gleich bei Nacht. If he would have gone out of jail Thursday, at that moment, who knows, maybe there was still time to change it and that he shouldn't have to travel that night and get there on Shabbos. Because there was time, maybe they still to try to work even more. Now, Leib wollte es nicht can beweisen in der kurzen Zeit, and even if those that short amount of time that he was from when he would leave the jail until he was supposed to travel, let's say it's too short of a time to think that you were able to change it, that he shouldn't have to travel that night. Still, there was a whole 24 hours about it, less till he would have to travel on Shabbos. Was beim Meshachzman Zeg, wenn die Möglichkeit liegt, Stadels Gedeel, also soll er aufstellen mit dem Weg bis nach Shabbos. So it's still so much time, so maybe they could have failed that they should be able to stop someplace in the middle of the traveling, and then Shabbos wouldn't have to travel on Shabbos. So B'meila we see this, that the Chil Shabbos was not so vada, it was a different Sfeikis. Und auch viel Leib will gezwungen bleiben im Bahnwaggon bei ihm Shabbos, and even if he wouldn't be able to stop someplace, go out, he would have to stay in the wagon, in the train that's driving. Is an onus. By doing that, it's not his fault. He's honest, he's forced to it. What's the Isser of being in the train that's traveling on Shabbat? It's only Isser Tchumen that you can't travel out of the city a certain amount of space. So it's only Isser Rabbanan. The Gefinne sich in vorn dig Bahn is nicht Asiyas Melocha. Being in a train that's traveling is not doing a Melocha. So the Chil Shabbos is not so big. So first of all, sakonis nefoshes. Staying in jail is big sakonis nefoshes, especially in this situation when he's staying in jail against their will. And then later on, he could have left Thursday afternoon and then till the night, like I'm just repeating everything he said before, till the night, he could have, there's enough hours, 6 hours that could change that he shouldn't have to travel right away. And even if he had to travel right away, maybe he could have stopped in the middle of the way. And so many fakers. And at worst, it's only Tchum and Rabbanon. And this is against the Union of Pikuach Nefesh. It's not understood. For was hat sich der Rebbe gestellt und hat Tekef Kernen vorn und sich hereinstellen, Teke the Matzah Sakone. So why did the Rebbe so strong against traveling and put himself in a Sakone right away? Hat die erste Sache gedacht, gleich herausgehen von der Sakone bis das Söhne. First thing, should have gone out of jail. They told him you could leave jail Thursday, should have gone out of jail. Going out of the Sakone of jail. Und dann noch suchen Netzes, wie soll nicht darfen vor Shabbos, and then to look for ways not to travel on Shabbos. But why did he go on Mesiras Nefesh in such a way? The answer is, as the Rebbe is going to explain, because this is a Mesiris Nefesh Hayr Cheshbenis. This is all a good cheshbon we made. It's Cheshbenis. Mesiris Nefesh Hayr Cheshbenis. That was the whole thing of the Rebbe's work. Asam Mesiris Nefesh Anhogiat Megzem am Rebbe. Dem ganzen Zugang zu der Aveda von der Botzes Atede V'Chizak Yades beim Din Ahi. This type of Mesiris Nefesh, without the Mesiris Nefesh, without Cheshbenis, this was generally the whole Aveda of everything he did that led up to being arrested, etc., was all this type of thing. And therefore, in Gimmel Tamuz, which was connected to the traveling, is Mesiris Nefesh without Cheshbenis. This was the point of what the whole Aveda was all about. The Geret kam upon him, like I said many times, hat in der Rebbe's Mesiris Nefesh, herausgenommen, nicht bloß in Yonem, welchem is mechuyev, herumgenommen, nicht bloß in Yonem, welchem is mechuyev, sich Meiser Nefesh sein, und the Filker Rebbe Mesiris Nefesh, what he did, was not only concerned with certain things that you're obligated to go on Mesiris Nefesh. You only have to go on Mesiris Nefesh for Avodah Zarah, Gilarais, Shvichas Damim. That's idol worship, adultery, and murder. But everything else, you don't have to go on Mesiris Nefesh. Even when I'm Mesiris Nefesh for things which is up to him, he doesn't have to. It's up to him. Noch mehr go even further. As I explained other times, is I Mesiris Nefesh given He was Mesiris Nefesh on certain things which other Gedalim, other Rabbanim claim that you do not have to go on Mesiris Nefesh for this. And he shouldn't go on Mesiris Nefesh. And nevertheless, he went on Mesiris Nefesh. So when we're talking about the general work that the Rebbe did, the Friedrich Rebbe did in that country, we could understand. If we start looking what he was accomplishing, it's not a specific thing he did and went on Mesiris Nefesh. When we look into the big picture, what he did with this Mesiris Nefesh, we'll understand why this is what he did. He went to Mesiris Nefesh without any cheshbenis calculations. Vazendik ad der Matze von Eden Medina hieß Azah, ad der Etzen Kiem von Eden und Niederschkeit gestanden in Grace Akone. He saw that the situation was in that country that the existence of Yidden and Yiddishkeit was in great danger. Shalayich ben Neir Yisrael chas v'sholom, that it's an expression that the candle of Yidden should not chas v'sholom be extinguished. Und wissendig sein Schliches als Nisi Yisrael, knowing his mission as the leader of Yidden, the Nossi of Yidden, but darf sorgen for Akim von Am Yisrael, has to worry about the existence of Am Yisrael, of the Yiddish nation, hat der Rebbe sei Mesiris Nefesh for Yidden sich nicht gerechnet mit keine Cheshbenis und keine Agbolas. He didn't care about any Cheshbenis and any limitations. Nicht in die Dabe, aber, so that's been the general Aveda of the Friedrich Rebbe. We're talking now also specifically on Gimmel Tamuz, the Mesiris Nefesh. He had beyond the real cheshbenis, Benegea Gimmel Tamuz specifically. So that's even more. Here in this case, we baldadois the meduber nicht wegen an ihnen was ritont akloponim tevas Rabbi b'tzibur. See, the other things the Mesiris Nefesh was negated to the tzibur to see what Yiddishkeit will be. This Gimmel Tamuz Mesiris Nefesh was nothing to benefit the Rabbim, the tzibur. Only it will help them. It's not even for their benefit. It was a question how he personally should behave in his own anhoge, in his own behavior. Whether he personally should travel to Kastrama, which will include Shabbos, or not travel to Kastrama. Why did the Rebbe go into Mesiris Nefesh even in such a way, for such a thing? Durch der Anhoge stellte ein, in Sakone, the ganze Avedish Leib, Botzes Atel, V'chizak Yadus. L'chure, this is a reason he should not go Mesiris Nefesh, because going Mesiris Nefesh is putting in danger his whole Aved. If Chas v'Sholem, something would happen to him, then he would put in jeopardy everything he did with saving Yiddishkeit. So why did he go Mesiris Nefesh in this prat also? So the answer is like this. This is even more. The other thing, when we Mesiris Nefesh and all his work, is L'Tevis Klal Yisrael. So there. But this, why did he go? And the answer is, the explanation is, the Kudah Sinyan zeh, so do nicht gehandelt sie mir so, the Kudah of Dinyan, like, so sich nicht gehandelt sie mir so, sich ja, oder nicht Meister sein, nächsten Nefesh ein Shabbos. The question was not, should he go Mesiris Nefesh for Shabbos? That wasn't the question. The do is gestanden, the Shaila from Kiddush Hashem or the Chilul Hashem. Here the question was Kiddush Hashem, sanctify Hashem's name, or Chilul Hashem, or make a Chilul Hashem. Why? And explains, the Matore von Divos Aristidem Rebbe gewähnt, gedei zu stellen die Arbeit von Rebbe Bachzokas Hayadus. The purpose of these people who arrested the Rebbe was in order to destroy the work of the Rebbe strengthening Yiddishkeit. Ilu Yitzura, der Rebbe wird nicht gleich gegengestellt sich, die Pkude zuvor und bald noch sein, bei freien Kirzenum. As the Rebbe soll vor Shabbos. Let's say, if the Frierdiker Rebbe would not oppose them so strongly, and in order to, that after he's freed, he should travel on Shabbos. Well, this would have been for them a victory. The Rebbe had masking given zuvor Shabbos. The Rebbe agreed to travel on Shabbos. They did it special. They made it so that he should have to travel on Shabbos. Had the Rebbe agreed, then they would have come out victorious. The alle Herren von der Askom, all those that people later would have heard that the Frierdiker Rebbe agreed to travel on Shabbos, but doch nicht gewusst, die alle Cheshbenes, the people who heard it would not know the Cheshbenes we made before, that this is a sakona, and this is, and that's a suffix, and all the different explanations they gave, they would know that. Amen is sich mishtadel bachshoi, und wenn ich sicher zu Peel sein, als der Rebbe soll nicht darfen vor den Shabbos, and that while he's going out of jail on Thursday, the idea was that you could still quietly work on it, making sure he doesn't go on Shabbos, etc., etc. No one would know that. We get come up, and that's why it would be a problem. This would be a chil Hashem. If people would know that the Rebbe agreed to on Shabbos, they would win. We got the Lubavitch Rebbe to travel on Shabbos. And this is a chil Hashem. And the Rebbe says, even though really it wouldn't be a wrong thing, because we said before the right thing to do logically was to travel on or go out to Thursday. We get come upon with that, but as I said many times, as b'shas es retzich wegen Kiddush Hashem, Achil Hashem, and we're discussing doing a Kiddush Hashem, Achil Hashem, is nicht negeit sie die Sache, wegen welches retzich is verbunden mit an Israchi Chomer or an Israchi Kal. It's not negeit whether we're talking about a very terrible Aveire or very light Aveire. Wir rechnen sich nur mit dem, sie die Menschen herum seinen Ol zu aussteichen, das aus ihnen hoffe. It depends what people will look at it. If people will look at it as something negative, that's called Chil Hashem. Even if from the real way that you're doing it is nothing wrong. Because as we said before, all these cheshbenas are true cheshbenas. And what he would have traveled, he would have gone on Thursday, would have been right. But people who don't know it, that's called Chil Hashem. Chil Hashem is in the eyes of the people who hear about it, take it as a negative thing is Chil Hashem. And that's for what the Frierdiker Rebbe Mesiras Nefesh. Even in this, which was for him personally, what to do, but it's not personally. It's a Chil Hashem, would have been a Chil Hashem for everything, and they would have come out victorious. They would have said, you see, we won. And that's what the Frierdiker Rebbe went on Mesiras Nefesh, beyond all the cheshbenis. And that's what we see in Gimmel Tamuz. And that's the Yesod of Beis Tamuz, which represents the whole Aveda of the Frierdiker Rebbe. It's hint, and that's the Shleimus Hagula, but it's hinted all in Gimmel Tamuz, because that's what we see in Gimmel Tamuz. Now we have to explain the connection between Gimmel Tamuz, as we explain now, to the Parshat Chukas. But this is the Shaykhs from Gimmel Tamuz to Parshat Chukas. This is the connection of Gimmel Tamuz to Chukas. In Parshat Chukas wird erzählt wegen dem Chet von Mei Merivo. In Parshat Chukas we're told about the sin of Moshe Rabbeinu called Mei Merivo. Was zu Leib dem seine Mensch war anhängisch geworden, als Leisevia Sakol Azel Oretz Gemer. That because of this Chet, this Aveire, Moshe and Aaron were punished not to be able to go into Eretz Yisrael. Couldn't it verstanden. It's not understood, as the Meforshim ask. What was so terrible about this Aveda that he did, that because of that he should be punished not to go to Eretz Yisrael? Noch in Yonim by Moshe, was Moshe zu lieb sein nicht geworden. The Torah Bechal tells other things that Moshe Rabbeinu was, so to speak, punished for what he did. Und von deswegen ist versehen nicht nennisch geworden mit der Zahar Menenisch. He wasn't punished with such a harsh punishment. Und darf gederche, der Shinu geschlagen im Seller, anstatt reden zu ihm, only this sin. And what was the sin? That instead of he hit the stick instead of speaking to the stick. Okay, it's not, he didn't listen. But Dafke, that's the terrible Aveda. Hat gebracht die Gseire Chamura, so rein in Eretz Yisrael, that because of that came this harsh thing of not to enter Eretz Yisrael. That the Talmud Ruf hat ongedeit in Posik, but the answer is what the Posik says. What did the Eibusher say? Why am I punishing you? Yan lehamantembi lag the sheinu leidem bnei Yisrael. Because you didn't believe in me to make the Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify my name in the eyes of Eden. Rashi explains that the fire is derchet mer chomer with the tiny information of Moshe not. One of the things Moshe said that deserved, so to speak, a punishment is that when Eibusher said Eden wanted meat, and Moshe said to Eibusher, how could you give meat? Even if they shecht all the animals, there's not enough. It's as if Moshe was questioning the ability of the Eibusher. Nevertheless, the Eibusher didn't punish him for that. And dafke this, so Rasha says why? Weil dort lefische beseiser chisavel hakos. Since it was quietly, no one knew about it. No one knew what Moshe said to the Eibishter. So the Eibishter didn't forgive him. The Kansha B'Maimed called Yisrael leichosav al hakosav. But here it was in public, in front of all the Eden. The Eibishter did not cover up on him, did not forgive him. B'pnei Kiddush Hashem, Rasha says, because of Kiddush Hashem. Das heißt, that means like this, when the Retzich wegen Anini from Kiddush Hashem, but der Hofcha, when you talk about Kiddush Hashem, or the opposite, is Negeya Blaze wie Azay das Wert ausgeteilt durch andere. It's Negeya how other people look at it. So that's the connection. Because by the Friedrich Rebbe also, what was the meaning of Gimmel Tamuz? That he was made sure there should not be a Chil Hashem. In the eyes of people, even though he would have done the right thing, but in the eyes of people, which fits to what it says in Parsha Chukas, concerning Moshe Rabbeinu, that the reason he was punished because the Chil Hashem is what counts most. Then the Rebbe says, "Atifrerin in dem yeshlemer." Even a deeper pshat, you could say like this: Der Eifer an Hogi Anal von Rebbe, was hat sich gegengestellt, die Pkude von die Welchom im arrestiert. This Hanhoge, the way the Friedrich Rebbe behaved, that he went against the command of those who arrested him. We find that it wasn't only, he came with this strength, not only concerning things that had to do with Yiddishkeit, nor with the Rebbe, the Tzilek, the Friedrich Rebbe himself told, as er by sich gemacht a festen Beschluss, he made himself a decision, a strong decision, as er so klar nicht nispol werden, that he should at all not get nispol from them. Nicht nur soll dich nicht rechnen mit sie in Sachen, was eine Negeya Blaze to Yerushalayim. And not only he shouldn't care what they say when it comes to Yerushalayim, to Yiddishkeit things, Bechlal, he shouldn't care about them. He shouldn't get nispol from them. Und so der an Hogi hat mit dem Reben bestraft mit Yisur Aguf Rachman Wilslan geschlagen v'chule. And because he behaved this way, that's why they punished him. They made him suffer. They hit him, etc., etc. In Azah, Hogi doch nicht scheiches the Cheshbeines and Alpha Kiddush Hashem oder as of Tonri in the Arbeit von Apotas Ater. And the question is why. These are things that have nothing to do with Kiddush Hashem, or it doesn't affect his work with spreading Yiddishkeit. If was in the town from them and Hoge, from them, if an Hoge from Rebbe, what's the reason for that? That he made that the Rebbe was so strong in not caring about what they say. Why did he do that? He said the beer in there and Hoge nirmus in Parshas Chukas bleichen shem aseder Chukas. So this is hinted in the what it says in the Parsha, but mainly in the word Chukas itself, which is the name of the Seder. What is the meaning of Chukas? Now, the simple chat of Chukas means the certain laws of the Torah are called Chukim. There are different categories of mitzvahs. Some are called mishpotim, mitzvahs that we understand without the Torah. Some are called mitzvahs that we understand only after the Torah told us that we have a Chukah mitzvahs that we have no explanation. That's the simple chat of Chukah. But the Alter Rebbe is mavayir as Chukah is meloshen chakike einkritz. Chukah is from being carved out, engraved. That's what the word chukah means, chakika, engravement. What does that mean? When you want to make words, there are two ways. Or you could write words with ink on a piece of paper and a piece of parchment, or you could carve it out in a stone. Certainly, if you have, let's say, a diamond, a stone like that, the Evan tape, we call it, to carve out words. What's the difference? The yistron for chakika, the specialty of carving out, engravement, over writing is like this. When you write something, the letters are in addition to the parchment which they're written on. When you write down the letters, they become one with the parchment you're writing it on. There are two things that they become connected. You could change that. You could even take it away completely. You could separate the letters from the parchment. You could erase it. When it comes to engravements, letters that are carved out are not a separate entity, a separate being, a separate mitzias from the thing on which they are carved out. They're part of it. They're part of the stone or the part of the diamond in which they are carved out. So therefore it's impossible to separate the letters from the stone. That only in the ACS is only in the Eventov. If you do want to change the letters, you are doing something to the stone, to the diamond, for instance. You can't take away the letters unless you chip away from the diamond. So it's part of the diamond or of the stone itself. That's the simple shot of carved out, of engravement. Dieselbe Sache bei Ruchnis, so tun Ruchnis. Wenn Avedes Hashem ist blaze wie zugegeben Sache zu dem Metzies Odom. If serving Hashem is like an additional thing to what the person is, even if it becomes one with him, but it's additional thing that we connect to him. Is meglachas in them so sein shinuyim. So it could be changes. Again, sein amatzev am zal nit kein sein an inyan avet Hashem meises shibishatia. Could be times that you do not serve Hashem, whichever reason. Sometimes you're forced into it. It's not your fault. But you could sometimes not do the Avodas Hashem. Und sein Metzias will dabei nicht werden angerührt. And it doesn't affect your Metzias because what you're affecting is the outside thing, something that's in addition to who you are. So that could be changed, but it doesn't change you. B'shas aber Avodas Hashem wird angekritzt in sein Metzias. But if service of Hashem is carved out in your being, Avodas Hashem wird atel von ihm allein, serving Hashem is part of who he is, then when you then you can't separate him from serving Hashem, from the Avodas Hashem. Zunehmen von ihm an ihn von Avodas Hashem meint zunehmen zu stellen sein Metzias. If you take away something Avodas Hashem by a person, you're taking away his Metzias. You're taking away part of who he is. Al derech einer was will zu stellen, the Tzuras Eises von Evan Tape, da sein Schwieres Evan Tapes. Just like when a person wants to take away the letters from the stone, from the diamond, you have to break part of the diamond. And the Rebbe Order 25 says, but what happened by the Luchas, we see the words, so it says there was a Nes. Luchas Nishberu ve'eses pechas, the Luchas were broken, but the letters separately went away. This was some kind of Nes, which is not regular, because they were Eses Achkika, the letters were carved out in the Luchas. Nevertheless, the Eses left them. So that's a special Nes. That's not normal. Normally, if you want to take out letters from it being carved in the stone, you have to take away part of the stone. It's part of you, so you're taking away part of it yourself. And then the Rebbe says this is also connected to the simple pshat of the word chukah. Chukah means which is beyond logic, which means it's something that's not because of you, something that you do because it makes sense. It's part that you understand it, but it's not really you. It's your seichel understands the mitzvah. But a chukah is something that's not with any logic, not any reasoning. So b'meila, this is you. That's all it is, which fits to the union of chakika that we just said now. Und der Fahr bei Yidden, was Avodas Hashem is bei Yidden, was Avodas Hashem is bei ihm chokah benafshe bei Yidden, Avodas Hashem is carved in his nefesh, is sich neis in nefesh of kol prat von Yiddishkeit on cheshbenes. He gives up his life for every detail and doesn't make any cheshbenes because it's him. Weil sie is Meglos von anderteilen zwischen ihm und welchen Inyan soll sein von Avodas Hashem. Anything that's Avodas Hashem has to do with Avodas Hashem, we can't separate between the two. And there's no cheshbenes here. Just like a chukah is no cheshbenes, this is no cheshbenes. This was the way the Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe behaved. Gebald, as in Yonen von Teire Mitzvah sein bei ihm gewähnt, Teire Mitzvah was by him engraved, und is der Riber sei Mesiresh Nefesh nicht gewähnt verbunden mit keinem Cheshbenes. So Mesiresh was no cheshbenes. In dem Fall Aloche, as man darf sich Mesiresh Nefesh sein, or that sie es leint sich, it wasn't, he didn't make a chesh whether this is Alpi Aloche, you have to come Mesiresh Nefesh, or is it worth it, is it the right thing to do, or is it worth it or not? Bei ihm das nicht gewähnt an ihnen vom Mesiresh Nefesh, schuldig bei einander Sach Schutzemänner. It wasn't Mesiresh Nefesh or something else. Great thing, but something else that's outside of him. Which make a cheshbon, should you make a nefesh or not? It came automatic. The Baal das Avodas Hashem is given a tail for sein Metzias Guf, since Avodas Hashem was part of his being. Wie says es ist möglich zu voneinander teilen zwischen sie. You can't separate between the two, between him and the Avodas Hashem. Bei ihm gewähren alle Unionen von Avodas Hashem bis zum Mesiras Nefesh. Everything went up all the way up to Mesiras Nefesh. Behind time is sei Mesiras Nefesh when nicht nur auf Sachen was am Begili angeregt seit der Weide. So therefore is Mesiras Nefesh not only when it was openly negated to what he was doing. Der hat sich Mesiras Nefesh darf nicht werden. He made Mesiras Nefesh bechlal not to get nispol from them. So not to be under them. Not to give nichna means to subjugate himself to them. He should be under them. Even the things which are not directly negeya, but it's b'chlal giving himself to them. It can be. These are people who are fighting Yiddishkeit, so he automatically couldn't care about them in whichever way. Sein nicht rechnen sich mit sei is nicht nur given an ihnen von cheshbon chulu. They're not taking consideration what they want. wasn't that he made a cheshbon, that he decided, well, this is something that has to be done. He could not become nichna to them. People who are trying to destroy his work of spreading Torah, but if you bald that Yavede by him in Eifen von Chukas, by Kikim and by since by him, this Avedas Hashem was Kikim was part of him. So anything that has to do again. So even though the specific thing he could have made a cheshbon, why shouldn't I listen to them? Why should I tell them I don't care about them? Because that means that he's giving himself under. He couldn't do that because his Metzias was Avedas Hashem, was basically means his Metzias of the Eibishter, and he was one with Elokus, and therefore he behaved that way. But the whole point of the Sikh is to show that Gimmel Tamuz is one of the days that represents this Aveda of not making any cheshbenis, and that's the beginning of the Gula, and that has a mila over the Shlemus Gula, because in the beginning of the Gula is in Nirmaz is hinted, and Kolol includes the whole thing, and the whole union of the Gula, which is the culmination of his Aveda in Harbatzas Atayre, was Heiler Cheshbenis, and that's hinted in the Gula of Gimel Tammuz, even though it's only the beginning, but in that prat, this is even more than Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz.